Right, welcome everyone at the next multi-network community sync. There is February 12th, and I have just updates from my side on some of the things that I've been working on. Beside that, don't have any other topics. Anyone else have something? Uh, if you do, just maybe I'll just leave the link, just add it to the agenda. So from my side, I did updated the items. Let me show how does it look like. So the projects are populated. Share this tab. So we have the multi-network alpha release. I had to add the multi-network because apparently the projects, if you enter them, they are global. I don't know, but GitHub kind of treats them as global, but filters them like that. You can assign them to here, but then basically if you click, you can see it's a Kube6 project. So basically we end up with a projects on the high level. So I added the multi-network naming. So we have the alpha release targeted and then the supporting efforts. Here I give some what we discussed items. If there is something we think anyone feels or wants to pick up and maybe split something even further into smaller pieces, feel free to suggest, and then I can chunk this even further into smaller pieces if someone wants to kind of chip in. And then before I go over those items, and then the supporting efforts is just I pick one of the views. I don't know how to kind of what would be the best. But here I have the kind of the ones that I thought. I think Lionel, you put a bit more, but those are the kind of things that I think that kind of works towards what we are multi-networking and kind of hopefully trying to kind of help this effort as well. Yeah, and basically that's all I wanted to kind of say about this one. In terms of like the elements for the alpha, and this is another update I'd like to give since I'm here. The design doc, I think I linked it here, did I? Not? Yeah. So the doc is basically ready from the point of view to what we discussed, right? Most of the things. I added some other kind of details on how some of the kind of handling can happen for the objects, so you can read some additional things. But basically, what we discussed on having the pod network and then creating the template out of that for the array. This is all, I think, written down here. You can take a look and comment on this. I think my next goal is to kind of kick off the POC work to find any gaps and basically enhance the whole thing with whatever the POC gonna discover. So I think that's my next goal to kind of get the ball rolling on the POC. Um, to give some highlight, I'm planning to have just not push anything to this repo or the other. This is only when we have the thing finalized. What I'm going to do is just put everything in my fork for these repos for the API and the controllers, and then it will be public. So anyone wants to kind of touch on this as well, then please feel free to do so. Um, I think that's all the update I want to say. Any other, I think, topics? Because otherwise, I think we can wrap up.
Maciej, just a short question,
Hmm.
mainly for alignment clarification. Um, as of today, there is this resource claim status cap, and
Hmm.
the documentation today, or at least the new features in Kubernetes 132, where it
Hmm.
states about the so-called network interfaces and so forth,
Right.
in alpha state, and there is potentially some criteria to be fulfilled for becoming beta, etc. How do we intend to handle that approach? Meaning later on, when we progress with the multi-network alpha release and so forth, how to make sure documentation
Hmm.
is in a way not creating a two-way of at least from an API spec that one can today, if they enable the alpha feature, can actually create a resource claim. And at the same time, going forward, we would like to hide some of those complexity through the pod network API, etc.
So I find this is quite transparent because the fields are pretty straightforward and they are explicitly say what they have to be. Um, because I looked at them and I'm not sure whether I called it out in the, I don't think in the design, I don't think I do have that yet. So I need to probably add that. Yeah, I don't have that. That's a fair point. Let me make sure I add that because that's something that I missed. I have it some other place, but not here. But the resource claim is a part of the DRA that's going to come with what you said, the status section, right? For the
Yeah.
networking. So I think from this point of from the point of view of this effort, we will just say that the only way to kind of update the the networking status of whatever you configured in the interface is there, and the fields explicitly define what sort of values you can place. That will be the standardization. So whether it's going to be through the implementation or implementer of this pod network, or what you said someone else going to do, this is going to end up being the same, because at the end, keep in mind, this is just like a overview of this is just a handler for the object, what basically then translates directly into a RDA objects. So I don't think there will be a confusion, at least today. The fields for the status, if when I looked at them recently, they are very, let me try to find that. They are very straightforward. And basically they are clear to, let me try to find that somewhere. I think I had it somewhere, the DRA. So there is no, I hope there is no room to over interpretation of how this should be said. Having said that, the ingenuity of people is there, and maybe they can do something crazy on this one, but I'm not saying it's not possible. Let me try to enhancement. Is there an trying to find the section where this has been added? Files change. And basically, this is, I don't think that's a, do you see that, Machine? Did I answer your question? That's, I think this is
Yeah, a
just a,
little bit. It was more how to kind the end user. Let's assume I would like
mm-hmm,
later on to create my workload and then take benefit of the multi-network.
mm-hmm.
Uh, I have, let's assume I have two choices. One is actually to create a custom resource from for the pod network, or lean on that aspect without thinking about the resource claim template and etc. The other way, if I read whatever features the ones in Kubernetes, and then I say, yeah, okay, resource claim template, I can do it this way. It was more from that perspective. Later on, we are still in a stage where we would like to take advantage of the new pod network object, the API, etc., and hiding the resource claim. But
So keep
then,
in mind,
yeah,
then it still will be the case, right? If you are going to so I will tell you this. If someone's going to create, let's say, their own, in their implementation, they're going to create their own CRD, right? For the implementation, then they will be on their own in terms of later on, for example, a service discovery.
yeah,
Because then what this effort is going to do next with what Pooja is on the call, but later on what Pooja is introducing is in the gateway API ability to create service through that. And then hopefully with the flexible controller that Lionel is working on, we can have that guy looking at the status, right? I assume, Lionel, that is the plan, right? To kind of eventually your
yes,
controller to look at this field. Exactly. So this is where this whole gonna come together, right? Where if you want to do your own, yeah, go ahead and create your own controller that's from your OCRD is going to create the endpoint slices out of whatever you want, right? But the standard way, or maybe the standardized way from this effort, will be to say that you your driver should populate this field in the way that it's described. And the reason for that is because then there will be an endpoint slice controller that's going to listen on this and look at this and create endpoint slices out of that. And then there's going to be a gateway API integrated with all this to further on build the whole serviceability on top of this. So that will be the story. If someone's going to do something on their own, then they will be on their own. The pieces will be there because in terms of having that ability to be flexible, because today we didn't have that, right? Today we have a service which you can do nothing with it because it's all hooked up to core and very rigid. So you would have to do annotations and a lot of stuff there to kind of allow it for that. But with gateway API changes, the new flexible controller, you probably could build, you would have the API path to build your own stuff, and that's everyone will be free to do that as well if they want to, right? But that will be up to the implementation, right? But I think the recommended, maybe that's the word, the recommended way from this effort will be to say that you have to populate this section to the status in the manner that it is described in this field, in these fields. And that's kind of my thinking. And that's, I think, in my design I did call out that we want to define the, maybe I had standardized the drivers implementation, put some sort of definitions for those. And one of the aspects will be you should populate this field for every interface that you create through this. Does that, I think this is then transparent of whether you fully just address or create your stuff through the template directly or through pod network, right? Because it will boil down to the same thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, it was more. Yeah, yeah. I understand that maybe the target will be that me as a workload provider, I will just focus on the spec resource claim, and then with the help of API or specific implementation and so forth, all the other things will be created on behalf of what I have expressed in that one.
And
It
that
was
should be
more,
the case
yeah,
because that will be the role of the implementations, right?
yeah,
The role of
yeah,
the implementations will be to then populate this, and then with the other open source objects, they will be properly propagated to serviceability support, service support,
yeah.
right? That's, I think that's the key here, right? Yeah.
Understood. Thanks.
Sure. Uh, any other topics anyone want to bring up?
Um, yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
continue, Motion.
No, it was more on. Um, you had some questions last week. Unfortunately, I could not participate due to some private issues. Mm, about the, I don't know if it was about the level of commitment or the type of commitment, etc.
So I think, yeah, I brought up a discussion on kind of who is willing to support this pod network CR. I think it boils down to, I'm trying to get this effort successful. And I think right now what we're looking at is having one implementer for that might be tricky. So this is why I brought that that kind of question last week to kind of see where everyone is at with this, right? Yeah, I think that was the kind of the discussion. And yeah, you were and maybe yeah, you can chip in because I did ask Lionel. I'm not sure whether machine you engage with as well with the DRA CNI on that one, and you can add more light into what you're thinking about that effort. But yeah, that's basically where discussion came from.
Okay, okay. Yeah. I mean, on a very high level, we at Ericsson are committed to the multi-network project, and
Mm-hmm.
we will, of course, secure. We have the right engagement, contribution, code review, spec, and so forth. The goal is, I think you have highlighted, and Dog as well, is to have a set of standardized API, and then, of course, that will give guidance how things could eventually be implemented. They will most probably, as of today, you have a flavor of CNIs, a flavor of load balancer, etc. But the majority from the application provider, they adhere to a set of well-known API and spec. And then of course, we will all benefit from some type of reference implementation, whether we have CNI DRR driver or maybe there is an evolution into the CNI spec as well. Um, and of course, the remaining parts, CRD spec, that could be something because we know that even Kubernetes would like to extend that further, etc., etc., on a very high level, Mashay. So we are well committed and will, of course, invest the time and the effort to help out this community that we all together have this multi-networking as a native integrated part of Kubernetes.
So I think what I kind of split into, and maybe to further clarify that, I split this kind of the whole multi-network effort, when you think about it, as a front end and back end. I think right now what Lionel is working with, and with you with the CNI, this is the backend, right? This is the implementation. And I think my question was about the commitment towards the front end, right? Are you willing to support the pod network CRD as it in whatever form it ends up is going to be? Because this is where we are here to discuss that, right? Keep in mind, this is not I'm trying to push one CRD, because I want to make sure it works for everyone. So this is where my question was on what sort of like engagement from the other folks, other companies and implementations is there for this API explicitly, right? I think that's where I was coming from, right? Where
Yeah.
okay, eventually, let's say on our side, we will work with Cilium to, yeah, we will at one point we are thinking of a case where you deploy Cilium and you can create a pod network CRD, and you will have your networking set up, right? That's that's kind of approach we are envisioning or trying to pursue, and this is where that was the question. This is where the question came from, right? As well, where are other kind of implementations on this? Is that the same thinking? This is what they kind of long term want to have achieve as well? That's, I think this is where the question is, Machine.
Yeah.
Maciej, maybe this is more a question for Calico OV and Kubernetes implementers then.
So, and that's fair. I think back in days we have some folks from Cisco. I'm not sure anyone else is here to kind of speak to Cisco, but yeah, that's a fair point, but they are not showing up here. So I'm asking about the folks that are here. You bringing up, Lionel, the other CNI DRI effort, and that's something that's more tangible than going to those folks. I agree. And then Doug as well, as a representative for Multus, right? That's why kind of I think we have some folks kind of representation of this of the industry here that are interested in this, right? Because you showing up and you think about this. So, but that's a fair point to kind of maybe reach out to Calico as well, what they think. But on the other hand, when you think about this, if they're not showing up, that might be not that might be kind of not, I'm not sure, probably could be as well an effort to pursue and reach out. But still, I wanted to kind of probe the situation within us, right? What's the commitment here?
Yeah, no. I mean, let us continue the work together, and of course, we are willing to of course help out with the CRD spec. I mean, for sure that we during alpha they are sorry, there are several attributes, etc., that we know that this will continue with the full backward compatibility, allowing extensions, etc., and then see how to make sure the rest of the community, and especially the awareness of the CNI vendors, how how the evolution of networking in Kubernetes is potentially would look like.
And that's fair
Yeah.
as well, right? Because I'm thinking of, I think even your effort, right? The CNI DRA, it's gonna hit some roadblocks, or okay, we need this and that from the either CRI or the kubelet or something else, because I'm missing some data, right? You're not passing it to me. So this is where the gaps we need to kind of figure out. I think Lionel did the POC last year, which kind of proved at least the base that it can work. And he worked with Antonio on that one. Antonio has his stuff as well that kind of proves that this can work, right? So, but kind of these efforts will show us what has to happen and in the core to kind of help us with this effort, right? I agree on that one, right? But then the front end, and this is the back end, right, for the whole thing. But this is the as well the front end where we want to say that, okay, this is how you eventually gonna configure this in a unified way, so that then we can go to, let's say, Gateway API and ask for, can we have a field for pod network in this object, right? Rather than deal with annotation, right? I think that's the ultimate, my ultimate kind of goal, to eventually, when we have a critical mass on this one, eventually we could do that, right? Instead of just being constantly annotation, just can we have an optional field to say, I want to be a pod network X or default or what's not, right? Rather than having been, as I said, being annotation, right? So that's, I think this is where, long term and like North Star, I would like to get to with this. But as I said, we need to have a critical mass. This has to be successful to have this argument of saying, yeah, we have a big community behind this. Pod network is a thing. And can we now get in those other CRDs a kind of reference for that? But without, the critical mass, without like the support from the community, that cannot. I don't think that can happen, right?
Yeah. But
right.
yeah, no, I agree. Let's continue the work on what you have outlined as working items and so forth, and at least with some good drafting, let us try to start reaching that mass and get
Sure.
others involved. I mean, SIG Network, CNI, many others. But yeah.
No, that sounds great. For the record, I know we have this recorded. If you could, Machine, I don't want to over or under interpret what you said. Could you kind of write down, like here in your own words, what you had in mind, and what, again, it is recorded, but still, if you could write it down so that we have it in the notes, I would
Sure, no
appreciate.
problem. Yeah, of
Thank
course.
you. All right.
You're welcome.
Any other topics?
I think it could be nice to write about and also define the difference between the backend and the front end. I think the idea is good to have this separation. And my question around this is, are we only supporting DRA backends? Last week we were talking about Multus could be a backend, but Multus is via annotation, it's not via DRA, for example. So are we planning to support Multus? Do we want to support this as a backend, or do we want to support only DRA? Because this impacts the design document that you're
right. And I think it's the latter. Like I think so. I said right. We want to support it through the array, and the reason for that is we are leveraging the array to have a non-annotation based selection in the pod. So when I think about support from Multus, is it converting support to pod network. And basically, I use Multus. Sorry, Dak, but you said it's okay. I use Multus as an example in my design as the kind of how would that look like, right? I have a pod network with all the spec for what network attachment was before. So yeah, network attachment definition would go away, and basically what will happen, Multus would have to slightly change so that it can work with the DRA approach as a driver, right? And that gives two things, right, to Multus. It can expand on availability, selective availability for the and discoverability. Right now, we couldn't have that. I think the only way to do that was through some a node pool selection, right? If I'm not mistaken, we have that annotation on the network attachment definition where we can say, okay, this can work only on those node label selectors unless something changed that. So maybe I haven't tracked what recently changed in Multus. So maybe I'm saying what happened like a few years back that was there. It was only through labels you can select or limit. This NAT can be selected on only those nodes. And with this, you can enhance that, right? To be fully integrated with the array and fully per node, you can say whether I can do it or not. Plus, you can say how many of those pods I can have on each, right? So there is a API path for Multus to enhance on that. But then the backend, and then going further down, it can still be done the same it was done today, right? I have a chain of CNIs I want to call, and I will do that, right? So that part can still be the same. Because it doesn't prevent us from doing that, right? And then even further, Multus then can properly, not properly, change how they. Today, the Multus is pushing all the return data onto the pod annotation, right? And that can still be there for backward compatibility, but then additionally can push it onto the resource claim and then be integrated with service right away. Why not, right? So this is where I would see Multus can be an implementer. It doesn't have to be a fully fledged thing like the array. And I am sticking to the array because the whole point of the array is to have this. Let me go back to my design for a second. Is to have, I think this. Let me zoom a bit. Is to have this piece, right? Attaching pod network to a pod. This is the kind of the thing that we wanted to write from the beginning. Have a networking, a first item, like a first party thing in the Kubernetes environment, that I don't say it as, oh, it's an annotation somewhere there. No, it's not. It's just a straightforward field for network. It's using a resource claim. Yes, it's a resource, but when you think about it, we can treat network as a resource as well, right? So that kind of fits. And maybe this can then evolve into some other aspects of the pod, right? And how Kubel behaves, because we can push maybe some tweaks over there just to kind of help some of this effort as well. So I think the array aspect is the core. I think we decided on this last June last year that let's pursue fully the array, and I think that decision has been made back then to do that. So I don't think we need to revisit that, but the commitment is to fully integrate with the array and only the array.
Okay, and are we still planning to exactly say how to use the array? I mean,
so this is where I agree. Yeah, Lionel, and this is where I think where your experience should chip in here. Exactly, because one of my goal here is that, right? Where was standardized driver implementation, right?
Yeah,
maybe this has to be rewarded to recommend or something like that. But I want to keep in mind, you cannot enforce someone. If they will achieve something with some other ways, they are free to do that, right? But I think that from our point of view is you use pod network, right? And then what you do in the backend, you have to leverage the array in some ways, right? And it's up to you how you do it. Right now, you're providing a path with what Antonio already showed us with the NRI, and you can do it this way, right? But someone could be doing something else, and we can give them recommended, like the as well a how we called it, a reference implementation. I think that was the statement. Like, we can show some reference implementation on how this can be done, but then eventually it's up to the implementation on how this is done. But they have to there are the touch points, like for example the status of resource claims, that if you want to leverage some features, you have to be consistent on those.
Yeah, it was related to the question I had last week, about the request and the scheduling part. But maybe Pooja was first.
You go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay, Lionel. You can finish your thought because my question is unrelated to exactly the discussion that was going on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was all I had to do or to say. It was just about this request, if we are instrumenting or defining exactly how to use the array? Are we saying that only one request per resource claim template or resource claim? Can we have a resource claim that belongs to a network? But
yeah, I see what I think you're referring to. I'm sharing this one. I'm sharing this. I think this is up to your comment on how the template looks, right? I think I see, and this is where right now I'm proposing this. Oh, my headset is battery's dying out, so yeah, let's think of what can we do otherwise, right? Right now I want to keep it simple. But I hear you. I know what you're saying, right? Like this aspect, right? This request
yes,
has a field called selector. I will be off for a second. Put your head.
Oh, sorry. You want me to? Sorry, Maciej. Did you want me to ask my question or?
I think he's changing the battery of his headset.
Oh, okay.
I'm back. Sorry. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So I think, Lionel, this is a proposal, as I mentioned, right? This I want to keep it simple for now.
Yeah.
And but yeah, we can see on what can be done here, right? I'm not saying this is why we need to make sure that it works for everyone. And I hear you. This is what as I said, I went through the fields. I think I mentioned I talked with someone on this one. I went through fields for the resource claim template, right? And basically how things can be set, right? We definitely providing only one config, right? We are not even not request. We only providing one config, and we are exposing this section, right, only to the pod network, right, in form of, what is an example here. So basically this config is this section. That's what are we exposing here. As you said last week, right, if we expose everything, then basically it becomes the same object, right? And we do want to have a separated pod network as a reference to as a handler, right? We need to have a CRD. That's what we kind of decided as well last year, that we need to have a networking handler that then can be spread. We should not reference a resource claim for that, right? And
one of the other idea I shared with you a few weeks ago was to have some kind of selector that's says each of the pod that fits these criteria. I added a comment a bit above, but yeah, just for
no, that's fair. So basically, because keep in mind, this is just a proposal. Oh, I see what you're saying here. Okay, yeah, I haven't seen those yet. But that's a fair point. Yeah, to have maybe here we can add that, right, as an option. So one of the two, right? You provide your own config and we create that, or you just some selector labels of the template that you want to target, or maybe a name. Selector, keep in mind, is always you would select a bunch of them rather than a singular. What if it targets? So we need to figure out what's going to happen if we target multiple, right? If it's a select.
Yeah, of course, I understand that. Yeah,
but that's a fair point. Yeah, let's please. I urge everyone to that instead. Please read through the first part of this. I think I have most of this what we discussed, but there are more details here, and this is all run by the API that are currently available. We'll see how the DRA evolve, but I think the DRA fields, this is all beta, in beta already, so I don't think I think Boe is here. You can probably speak to that. Is beta right now is just that? Are they gonna change any fields? Can they change any fields in beta?
You can always change fields, even in GA. You could deprecate the API, but I would imagine that mostly what is happening, at least that I know of in caps and stuff, is to add stuff to it.
Add, but not modify, right? I assume.
Generally speaking, it doesn't seem like there's going to be any gigantic change. Although a couple of things that you might want to look at is like there's a proposal on how to subdivide a resource claim.
Yeah, I think this is that the one that.
So, okay, so why would that make sense because, for example, you could have like an abstract network potentially, and then it gets subdivided into like particular attachments to it.
So
I'm just making
I'm
that up.
looking
That
at,
doesn't necessarily make sense, but I'm just saying like there are things that are coming that we should definitely look at. The other one is there are some proposals to more dynamically create claims and attachments, and we should also look at that as well.
oh, okay. So I think all the enhancement in DRA, I'm hoping they can only help the implementation. They shouldn't affect the front end, as I called it, too much. That's my hoping. I want to make sure that we are abstract enough so that we can not rely on the DRA enhancements, whatever happening there. They definitely can help the implementers and to better express whatever they want to do. Like what you said with the divide of the interface, I think.
At least one thought experiment is like there is something that configures the networks and kind of describes them. That is outside of DRA because, for example, for DRA
Right.
for GPUs, there's something outside that's going to describe the GPUs and kind of how they're set up. Now, when these devices and resources show up on the node, then the pods can get scheduled to them, or maybe they will be dynamically attached. That's kind of the proposal I alluded to earlier. Why not just allow people to just use DRA to describe these attachments? Like,
so, and this is fair. This is
we
what I think
need
what
another
Lionel-
layer, and then we should be very specific on what that layer is, the responsibility of that layer is.
Oh, okay.
I think that would help because, right, it's like one DRA is in beta, so that means you can influence the design. So if it's just a small increment just to get DRA into a shape where it's just usable directly, that would be awesome. If there's something missing, obviously, et cetera, fill in the blank there. The other thing is it would clarify kind of like what the things that we're building on top of DRA are. Are they in the first stage, which is like bootstrap, add networks, talk about how they're configured, and then kind of get the devices to show up? Are in the second stage, which is when you describe the pods and like attach them to the devices? And then do we want to abstract there or not? Those are kind of like some thoughts that I had looking at both of the things.
All right. I think Pooja had a hand. I'm not sure you don't want to talk. Did you?
No, I just had a very generic question. Where is this document? Because in the notes, I see a document that's the KEP for pod network phase 1.
Oh, apologies. So that's in the last week meeting. Let me maybe I will update that top of the top section of this one.
Okay.
It's in the Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think I linked it. I linked it in the previous meeting. So yeah, I will update the header of the doc of the notes as well.
Okay.
All right. I will add the distinction between front end and back end. What I'm calling, I'm basically, yeah. Let's have that. But basically, I will put in a design to have that distinction, Lionel. I think that should be there. I will add that there. And then I will tag you to when I look at, and everyone can look at it. Design, and then lastly, going back here. All right. Any other topics? All right, then. Give you 15 minutes back. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you too as well.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.